This episode of Instant Speed Podcast is brought to you by FAB Cards. Located in Utah, FAB Cards is a smart choice for all of your flesh and blood needs. Prepare for the battles you'll face through the world of Wraith by gearing up at kfabcards.com. That's KAYFABECARDS.com and get all of the cards shipped directly to your door. Hey, if Magic or Pokemon is your jam, they've got you covered. FAB Cards has a plethora of TCG options, sealed products, and singles to keep you collecting and keep you competitive. FAB Cards, be who you want to be. This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 67. Our guests today, Logan Peterson, Derek Oswald of FleshnPod. And of course, this episode is always brought to you by FAB Cards. Again, we bring you the facts before anything else. Today, I think the bans have got me down, and that's what we want to talk about because the bans and restrictions have come into play. They are effective as of January 30th, so they're not going to touch the pro quests that are left this week. But here are the bans. You got Belittle and Winter's Wail. Gonzo, completely banned. Can't play them. Besides that, Amulet of Ice and Hypothermia are suspended until Icelander hits Living Legend. So some ice stuff. My boy Oldhim got hit, and Belittle is Gonzo. How about History Pack 2? History Pack 1, my favorite thing. White border cards are amazing, but History Pack 2 is around the corner. That's going to fit in the other sets. Things like Monarch, Tales of Aria, and I believe Everfest are going to be fit into there. More paper packs as well. History Pack 2 is releasing on February 24th, and I think there's going to be some Blitz decks associated with it as well. So keep your eyes open for History Pack number 2 coming at you on February 24th. Goliath Gauntlet 2, however, is hot and heavy. That's underway. The quarterfinals are underway at this moment at 983 Media. This YouTube channel, if you're already on the YouTube, if not, go to youtube.com/983 Media and get a glimpse at all the action, as well as not to miss any of the live premieres of the other matches that are going through. I also want to take a quick minute to just clarify something that I mentioned in the previous episode of Instant Speed Podcast, where we talked about community-based tournaments, etc. I mentioned the Realm Gaming and their circuit that they're putting together, and I just want to clarify, this is a Realm Gaming circuit. I know that they're partnering up with other great LGSs based on their stops around the US. They're going to be in Chicago, they're going to be in Pittsburgh, they're going to be in Salt Lake City. The Realm Gaming circuit is something that's pretty damn awesome, a huge prize pool covering all kinds of different events. I had mentioned that it's like in partnership with other LGSs like MinMax Games, FAB Cards, Green Tree Sports, etc. These are great entities, but I did make the mistake of saying that it's just like they're all coming together to cover the whole circuit. I have to clarify, this is Realm Gaming's circuit. They are going to be partnering to make sure that when they're in these different spots, such as in Chicago, the Realm Game circuit is going to have partnerships with other entities like MinMax Games, and you know me and MinMax Games. MinMax Games is awesome, so that's going to be a partnership that I am so happy to see in Chicago. But then they're going to move to Pittsburgh. They're going to pair up with an entity like Green Tree Sports. They're going to move to Salt Lake City, pair up with FAB Cards. The Realm Gaming circuit is going to be all over the place, and it is going to be awesome. I do highly recommend you go take a look at this, and we talk about it a bit in this episode as well. But if it does tickle your fancy, check out the Realm Games and go look into their circuit, because I promise you, I'm going to be at all these events, and I'm jealous that I'm not going to be playing in them because they're a damn party. Even when you're there to play, it feels awesome. So go check out the Realm Gaming circuit at realmgames.com. The Patreon exclusives this week, well, what do we got for you? I've got the Go Again segment, which frankly is the spiciest one that we've done so far. With Logan and Derek are just, they let loose, as do I. So that's a Patreon exclusive this week, as well as I've got my Oldhim deck guide, matchups, all that stuff, plus my post-tournament recap review, what I did wrong, where I could have improved, what happened, all in detail is going to be available on Patreon as well. I did top 8 the ProQuest in Minneapolis, and you can hear all about it in those articles that I'm writing, and plenty more to come this week. All right, enough of the news, friends. Let's get to the guest. That is Logan Peterson and Derek Oswald of FleshnPod.
ISP is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. Yeah, all my cards, they fit snugly into a perfect fit, and then we slide them right into an Elite 2 sleeve. Those cards, hey, well, they're resting easy and protected in my Deck Vault 100. Ooh, it's a nice one. Well, all of my spiciest gems, well, they're on display in my Z Folio LX. Yeah, you could treat your collection with love by going to bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Oh, yeah. And hey, maybe cards might not be your only thing. Are you into coins, comics? Maybe you want to show off your record collection? They've got you covered. Use the code ISP10 at checkout for 10% off your BCW Supplies purchases. BCW Supplies. Protect, store, display. The Instant Speed Podcast is proud to welcome a 2-for-1 special that would make Billy Mays rise from the dead. It's that good, friends. It is the duo from FleshnPod, the podcast. I've got Derek Oswald, aka Charmer, and Logan Peterson on the program. And for those who are unaware, FleshnPod is actually, and I say this with sincere love for the entire community, this is the only podcast that I have as scheduled listening. When it comes out, I listen to it. Everyone else, it's usually, okay, I got time, I can listen to it, this is that. This is the only one I never miss. I'm sorry, Tommy. I'm sorry, Elaine. I'm sorry, Combat Chain, M&R Podcast, everyone else. I love you all. This is it for me. But welcome, friends. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to be at the pinnacle of your playlist. It's good to be at the top. It looks great up here.
Well, you're like nestled between like basically my Incubus playlist and like a playlist that's a mashup of Backstreet Boys and Hanson. So you're in there. You're in the mix.
So I'm either topping for Incubus or bottoming for Hanson. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Power topping or power bottoming for Incubus, and certainly a top on Hanson. Yes.
Okay, well that makes sense. Okay, that tracks.
Yeah.
Especially now when everything is a little bit older than it used to be.
Charmer, you're sort of the new, I don't want to say the new kid on the block because I don't want to give you that much credit, but you are definitely kind of like the new face here. But all jokes aside, when I found out that you were going to be replacing is not the proper word, but stepping in for Abby and Jordan on FleshnPod, it made me very happy because not only do I consider you a good friend, but you're basically pairing up with a good friend of mine, and your skill set is, in my opinion, such a great contrast to Logan, and that's why I don't miss an episode of your show, because it's just such a great dynamic, and that's a lot of that is because of you, Charmer.
Well, first of all, with that open, I need an adult, because I don't want to be alone in a room with you two talking about power topping or bottoming for Hanson or anybody else for that matter. So excuse me, gentlemen. I didn't realize we were going that deep this early.
Coming soon, second, the Power Tops
I love how Flake's like, oh, you're kind of the new face on the block. And look, I get it. It's because Abby and Jordan are amazing, and I'm theoretically carrying their torch. But I was like the, I don't know, first or second ever guest on Instant Speed, and now I'm only getting invited back because of Logan. Like, let's be honest here. So, not new. I'm so old, I'm forgotten.
Yeah, you're like the fries at the bottom of the bag that when you're done eating, you're like, oh, I get them. All right. I mean, I don't need them, but like, I'm happy they're there, I guess, you know?
I'm the fries that are left over when you order Five Guys and you don't want them. You didn't want them to begin with, but they overfilled the bag, so you're giving them away. And you're like, oh, I guess here's some Chamber, here's some Charger, some Charmander. I suppose you can enjoy that. No, I'm legitimately excited to be here, and I love you, Flake. And for those who don't know, I'm only ribbing on him because Matt is a very dear friend of mine, so much so my kids call him Uncle Flake. The other night I was talking to him, and Stark was like, oh, you're talking to Flake? I want to say hi. Does he want to play Fortnite with me? Like, it's always a pleasure. But now we get to do it in a professional setting, so I have to watch what I say.
Yeah. Well, Logan's well aware of the Instant Speed podcast rules, of which I will say you've basically surpassed the 30-second threshold that you should be. However, yeah, I know, because you were like, ooh, like out of the gate you go. No. We have to abide by the rules of my producer, of which you can drop there's one F-bomb allowed, and I am giving it to you, Logan, and you can use it at your own discretion. Don't just toss it out there.
Why does he get it?
Oh, why does he get it? First of all,
why does he get though? I want the one, okay?
Thank you for first of all self-policing, but ultimately, I mean, let's be real. If there was Logan, it's yours. Let's be real.
Let's be real.
I appreciate that. He has. I think Derek has only. We're what 4 episodes in with Derek. With me solo, and I think he's only dropped 1 F-bomb in 4 episodes. So he's very, very reserved when it comes to laying waste to the countryside, and I'm just the nuclear option.
Well, in which case, which one of you is technically picking up the slack? Is it him for being, reserved and more prim and proper, or is it you who's being like, well, our Fs per minute is at an all-time low, we gotta ramp this up?
So I think that I've always been permanent slack, and Jordan and Abby were the slack carriers in that case. They always kind of helped me along to being something pseudo legitimate. And so when they left, I was like, well, I need another air of legitimacy, because otherwise I'm just a clown and there's no room for more clowns. And so I was like, oh, wait, Derek is respectable. He's like a cop. He lives in Detroit. What more could I want? And it's but at that point in time, it's like, well, I got one option, and if he says no, then I'm just going to fold up shop. That's all there is to it. But lucky for me, he said yes, and he has continued to carry my slack. I still don't know how he gets work, honestly, because being associated with me should be exclusionary, I would think. That you're never working again when you're on a show with me on a regular basis. But yet here he is, still working. I don't know.
You're doing well. Both of you, frankly. There is going to be eventually after this the Patreon exclusive Go Again segment, which is the Q&A segment, of which, well, that's not a YouTube property. That's exclusive for the Patreon. It's just a straight up upload. So you guys can, you like you said, you can hover your finger over the nuclear button there. I will turn my key on that one, and you can turn your key on that one. And then, Derek, you have the launch codes, I imagine.
I have the launch codes. Yes, okay. I do.
All right, we got some stuff to get into, and I think that it's definitely responsible to touch upon the BNR first and foremost. And I know that you guys, with your podcast, is something that I learned a while ago, which was I used to record, I think on Sundays or Mondays in order for release on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And then I realized that news typically comes out on the Monday or the Tuesday anyways. So I pushed it over. I know that I listened to your episode this morning, BNR out of nowhere. Hey, look at that. Just get her done. So you guys are a little bit behind the shoe on this one, but we can talk about it here. That's why I brought you guys here. BNR. Ultimately, we've got Belittle that is banned, Winter's Wail that is banned, Hypothermia is suspended, and Amulet of Ice is also suspended until essentially Icelander, I guess, takes a hike. Initial impressions on these. We'll start with you, Derek. What do you think about these? Again, we didn't have much time to digest this. If you're listening to the podcast, we are recording this on January 24th, literally a couple hours after it was announced. So you just woke up, frankly, Logan. So you didn't even have time to digest or sort of mull over these. But I'll give you that time while Charmer, you sort of hit us with the first impressions.
Well, Logan's not the only one who just woke up. I was awake long enough to see the announcement, and then I slipped into a quick nap, a fever dream, if you will. The Flesh and Blood gods, they visited me in my dream. They came down from the heavens and they said, "We have a message for you." But it's the time of the dragon.
But it's not an OP announcement. It has nothing to do.
It's not an OP announcement. No. But the time of the dragon is now. So my knee-jerk reaction, of course, is probably the same as everybody's was. Okay, we're going to see a lot more FI. But after having mulled it over, right, after actually kind of sitting with the news, I'm not necessarily convinced that's the case. I think what we're going to actually see is we're going to have more FI conversions. So with the meta report, you may have noticed that there is a lot of FI representation already. That also mirrors the pro quests that I have either personally played in or covered. FI has traditionally been one of, if not the most represented hero. But when it comes to actual wins, it's been Icy Boy, Elsa, a lot of non-Fi characters. Not saying that Fi is not viable, but he's good enough to get you wins against kind of like the rest of the field, and then not enough to get over the hump. So I think that what we're going to see is maybe a very small uptick in Fi playing, but more conversions. I also think that we're going to see a bit more Briar. I felt like Briar was already kind of underrepresented going into this because Thorn is still an amazing card. Channel Mount Heroic can still kind of do Rhinar-esque things, but for a Runeblade, which sounds scary when you put it that way. So I think we're going to see more of that. I don't think that either Icelander or Oldhim are outright unplayable now. I think that the folks who have reps on them will be the most rewarded. And then the other thing that stands out to me is Bravo. So I'm a huge Bravo fan if you follow me at all. The thing that really stands out to me about Bravo is, one, he's actually going to be better at disrupting Fi than Oldhim and likely Icelander now, just because if you run the 3 copies of Crippling Crush, and if you want to just really hate your local meta, because I have a lot of ninjas in mind, you can also run Choke Slams. Obviously, Cripplings are always there, et cetera, et cetera. You can make a ninja have real nightmares, like legitimate wake up in a cold sweat. So I think that Bravo, with the hype around potentially Fi, will also have an opportunity to shine. But the real reason I think he'll shine, because he's always had those good matchups, the real reason I think he's going to shine is specifically Winter's Whale being banned. I don't think people realize how important that one is out of all of them, because that 4 damage breakpoint for a card was huge. And now that Oldhim has to go to Titan's Fist, and this is a deck that does not traditionally build around the 3 costs the way that Bravo does, it is very often going to be 3 instead of 4, which is a 1 card block at rate without needing your sinks. So in the Guardian mirror, like that's actually pretty massive in my opinion.
I honestly don't think that Titan's Fist is going to be the answer. I truly believe that before people go to Titan's Fist, they might try it, but they'll likely soon realize that, sure, like, think of it this way: you need a 3 pitch to get it to go. And so none of the ice cards are going to work because Winter's Grasp is a 2. All the other ice cards that you typically pack in there are 2s or less. So that's not going to get it over the hump. So you're going to have to replace those with other cards that might work out. Maybe you're running, your Autumn's Touch. Maybe you have to go away from ice, which means that the whole hero. I honestly think that like clipping Winter's Whale really was the biggest jab to the ribs for that hero more than anything else. I also truly believe that people are gonna probably settle on something like Anathos before they settle on Titan's Fist, in which case people will probably also lean more heavily on Tectonic Plating than on Tunic, which means
So it's funny, I was getting there. So if you go another route, I actually think that the game plan ends up being, for the Guardian Mirror, you go back to Sledge. So if you have been following, some great Oldhim players, specifically like Dagan White, for example, he's been a big fan of, you go like Rampart, Winter's Whale. Listen, it's hashtag no free ads for you, Flake. You're on your own show. I don't need to tout you as being one of the best Oldhim players I know. Okay, I see you. But my point is that most folks had kind of come off of Sledge. I think that you have to go back to it for the mirror. I just think that actually puts you behind when you're trading blows with Bravo, because he's always going to have that opportunity now to go 1 card 4, as opposed to, you're locked into 2 card 6. And you could try Anothos if you're Oldhim, but that drastically changes the way you build your deck. That is not a deck that traditionally goes hard on the 3 costs the way that Bravo does. So you're not going to be as consistent there either. But the last thing that I wanted to hit when I was thinking about how this changes the meta is this is also an opportunity potentially for Dromai to shine because of the way local metas shake out. So if you are in a local meta like I am, right, in what I'll call like the 1 hour drive radius, we have a lot of ninjas. But specifically at my armories, there's like me and 3 other Guardians that are like the anti-ninja crowd. And I really am kind of wanting to just pick up Dromai and then just ram it into the Guardians, because I think that you're not going to have to worry as much about some of the disruption options. Yes, obviously Channel Lake Frigid is still there. That's still scary, but you're not being raced as hard. You can be more aggressive in that matchup now. And so I think that we might see a bit more Dromai representation as like a counter reaction, right? So initial reaction is like, all right, 5 players rejoice, prior players, if you were in hiding, maybe you come out. Then the overreaction to that is, all right, Bravo is the new counter. If we loved Oldhim, maybe we try Bravo now. And then the reaction to the reaction is potentially Dromai stepping up. And it reminds me quite a bit of the old like Starvo, Prism, Viserai meta that we had there for a while. And that's where I think we're going to land, is somewhere similar to that, but with still more diversity. I think overall, I think that the meta will not be as like triad based as that one was, but I think that play style wise and what your game plan is, it's going to be similar.
All right. So before we go to you, Logan, I didn't call you Jordan. I didn't call you Jordan.
Okay.
I messaged him like maybe an
I know,
hour ago.
I was on that same thread. So
pretty good thread, right?
It's a good thread.
Yeah.
But plus you could call me worse. That's for sure.
That is absolutely true. When you mentioned a 1 mile radius, like drive radius, to me in Toronto, depending on the day, that's either 10 miles or 60 miles. It's ridiculous. But all right. So like that was pretty in depth. And I can't argue with that. I definitely can't argue with that. It's just, when it comes down to it, like the way that you're taking away Whale from Oldhim and what it does to the hero, you no longer need as many ice cards because you're not really fusing ice, which means you lean more towards earth. If you lean more towards earth, what else are you doing? Are you changing this up? Are you changing that up? It's a nightmare. Logan, your assessment of these bans and restrictions, that we talked about them a little bit briefly, and I think you mentioned it's like I think you said it's a Dromai world we're living in, right? So
yeah, that's the red lights right now, are to make sure we're hailing our Empress, that she's coming very soon to a pro tour near you. But I think that, so I mean, the Guardian Simpson you two are showing, it's pretty obvious, but I think that there's still a lot to talk about when it comes to whether or not you play Titans Fest, whether or not you play Oldhim versus Bravo, mainly because Bravo, again, didn't lose anything, right? Like Bravo absolutely did not get touched. Oldhim got the bad touch. He is not in a good spot, but he still has Crown Shield. That is still one of the most powerful play patterns on a regular basis into a variety of decks that you can have. And it's going to be interesting to see how much the weapon mattered. I think it mattered a lot. Did it matter so much that the hero's unplayable? I don't know. I doubt it. I also feel like Icelander didn't get hit hard enough. I mean, yes, Amulet is a big deal, but Aether Ice Vein still exists. And they can lean into a little bit more attack heavy if they want to. I feel like there's, the ice heroes are still strong. They're weakened enough to let other things in, but the Belittle ban is not getting enough talk. The Belittle ban hits Fi very hard. Most Fi decks are up to 6 copies of Belittle. They're playing reds and yellows, because smoothing out the ability to use your Ember Blade creates havoc against other decks. And now you don't have it. It's not there anymore. Your security blanket has been taken away in a lot of senses. So you may see a lot of drifting towards Kodachi Fi as an example. Something where you wouldn't necessarily tutoring the blue isn't as important because you still can just pitch a single red and have a Kodachi if that's what you want. Like you can turn a drawn Phoenix Flame that didn't have any other impact into 1 damage if you wanted to without any effort. Whereas now you don't have the ability to just go fetch the blue to go with your Ember Blade to get in there for 3 alongside a combat chain that is already 847 links or whatever the hell it is wide. I think that matters. And we're going to see a very hard shift in the way that Fi is built to basically accommodate for that. Either you're going to start playing Kodachis or, as a concession to it, or you have to up your blue count. Right now they're sitting at a fairly low blue count because they can get away with it.
I think that, the whole leaning on the crown into shield kind of combo is quite important. I think that is a major aspect of what makes Oldhim an attractive option. And I heard you guys talking about it on the podcast. We were at the PQ in Minneapolis, you and I, and you were talking a little bit about watching the game I played against Lexi and getting drill shotted and losing out on my rampart of the Ram's Head. That's a major huge detriment to me, because again, it's a huge part of my equipment set. If I can just lean on that to soak damage through and through, cycle cards, get some value out of that, it's definitely a big deal. And the thing is that in that BNR announcement, you have, okay, here's the 4 cards we're banning, here's the paragraphs explaining why we're banning it, and right under that was Crown of Seeds, and a paragraph about Crown of Seeds, and a paragraph that our good friend Brian Gottlieb wrote saying, hey, we got our eye on it. And there's reason why. It's basically them saying, yeah, we kind of wanted to do something with this. And it was certainly one of the things on the wheel that we kind of were spinning around, and, and ultimately it never made it at the end of the day, because when we're playtesting Outsiders, they think that Crown has a place within Outsiders meta. And to me, what I'm thinking when I hear that, and I want your guys' thoughts on this, what I'm thinking when I hear that Crown has a place in Outsiders meta, I think it's because the way that some people might anticipate is saying, well, Outsiders meta, Crown isn't going to be as strong in Outsiders meta. But the way I read it into it is that Crown might be essential in Outsiders meta for Oldhim to even have a bloody chance. And I think because when Katsu rolls around, and Katsu might actually be the tits in when Outsiders comes out, and Ram's Head Crown of Seeds might have to be there for people to even have for Oldhim to even have a prayer against it. That might be the policeman, much like Prism was policing Oldhim for so long. I think Oldhim might have to be policing Katsu once that comes out. Not to say that it's going to be great, but people might actually be saying like, well, Katsu's really good, but if I run into an Oldhim, like I just lose. So that could be why they're out there. I want to maybe get your impressions of it. Logan, you could kick this one off about what you think Outsiders or why Crown of Seeds was dodged in this, and what is your interpretation of the whole fact that they're thinking like, well, hey, Outsiders and Crown, you kind of need it.
Yeah, I think there are 2 major points that were touched on. The first you've kind of alluded to, and I'll get to that in a second. But the bigger point to me that they talked about that gave me pause was it's a legendary, and having legendaries banned is something that they are actively adverse to, because the feeling you get when you open a legendary, the feeling you get when you open a Duskblade, which is a majestic, and now it'll be a Winter's Wail as well, that are banned, is god awful. And think if you opened something in the legendary slot that was banned, that is an epic feel bad, and they're actively trying to avoid that. And I think that I applaud them. Banning around that becomes even more problematic at times, though, because you have a laundry list of cards that you had to get rid of because you're trying to keep this one thing from being too much. So I think that they're going to run into problems if they keep pushing things, but especially in the legendary slot. But I think that they're understanding how the levers work enough that we're not going to see that much. We haven't seen, Crown of Providence is a card that exists, but it's not near as oppressive as something like a Crown of Seeds over and over and over and over again being worth that 1 damage. But I think that when it comes to Outsiders, the reasoning is this. Yeah, you have multiple heroes that their primary ways of attacking you are pokey sticks. Katsu has his pokey sticks. They're called Harmonized Kadachis. The assassins have their pokey sticks. They're called Spider's Bites. And Spider's Bite is a problem because of the piercing mechanic. And your Kadachis are a problem because they cost 1. It does not take much to light you up with Kadachis. So this is a way to sort of concede to, okay, we can play to some of the leaving Crown allows Guardian to have an out against some of the more toxic play patterns of Kadachi you, do a thing. Now I'm forcing you to overblock in case I have something, because you don't want a mass trigger type of situations where with the play pattern now, it's okay, pitch to Crown, Block with Ram's Head, pay for Ram's Head for the first one, let Crown suck up the next one, or don't. Either way is fine. And it allows you to have a continual play pattern. I do think that the ninjas and assassins, especially the assassins, I know Brian, or not Brian, wow. Derek, you're now Brian. I have finally done it. I have called you accidentally somebody else's name.
Can I be Uber?
There's no comment.
Damn it.
There's a, but at this point in time, I know that you really want the assassin support, but they do have to be careful because assassin can get very good very fast. It's fringe right now, but we have one supplemental set with assassin cards in it. And a lot of people feel like it's only like 3 or 4 cards at most away from being fantastic.
Didn't it win? It won like a ProQuest or two. Arachne's won ProQuests.
It didn't in week 1, but I haven't seen the analysis for week 2. But I think I have seen it that it did happen, which still puts Azalea firmly back in the dumpster where she belongs as the only adult hero to not have living legend points. So that bounty's still out there, children. You're more than welcome to go chase it.
How about you, Brian?
Yeah, I think that keeping Crown of Seeds is a bit because of the 1 damage pokes, and a bit potentially because of Outsiders meta, a bit because it is a legendary. You don't want the fields bad. I had talked about, back when Seeds was banned from Chain, how even though it wasn't the card that got banned at the time, it felt like Eclipse got banned, right? Because it went to be, it went from being something that it was a guaranteed you include in every chain deck, you were excited to play it, whatever, to like, well, maybe I'll do it, maybe I'll not. It's just not a good feeling. But I also just want to highlight that as much as Crown of Seeds catches flack for being so above rate and powerful, and it is, and I am not disputing any of that. The reality is it's also just a fun card. Like, drawing cards is one of my favorite things to do in card games just as a whole. And maybe that's like 30 years of the kinds of games that I've played, but it is a fun experience. And in Flesh and Blood, because of the draw up at the end of a turn thing, you don't often get that feeling in the card game. I mean, there are cards that let you draw cards, right? But that's not like an emphasis point for Flesh and Blood. And Crown is one of the only consistent ways that you feel like you get to, all right, well, my hand is like kind of medium. Let's rip off the top from Crown. Maybe it gets better. And it's just, it's fun to use. And I get it. It's powerful. It probably could have been toned back or whatever, but just like that idea of, I'm digging into my deck and I'm setting up my pitch stack and all of the things that it does, it feels rewarding if you put the time into it, right? And I don't want them to shy away from cards like that in the future. Maybe tone it down, but the play style is exciting.
There's some definite to refer to Steven Seagal's martial art bullshido that goes on when you're like, and I've done this. Trust me, I've played enough Oldhim in the past 4 to 5 weeks that this is an occurrence that I sometimes even call. Like, you call your shot, like that old McDonald's commercial with Larry Bird, and you're like, off to this, off to that. I'm there. I'm like, all right, here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to block this way on my turn. I'm going to cycle, or I'm going to present hammer before damage. I'm going to cycle my my arsenal with the blue, pick up a pummel and end the game that way. And it's happened. And again, it's complete bullshito, but oh my God, you're right. It is a fun card on this end. And this kind of leads me into the next little bit that I want to touch upon very briefly before we get into ProQuest season and a lot of the community events that we're all involved with here. But there's been a lot of crying, a lot of whining out there about Oldhim, and people being like, your whole thing is to draw the game out. I just want to address this because I feel slightly attacked, and you guys can chime in on this, because we have all 3 of us have probably enough card game experience. We have combined 60, 70 years of card game experience between us, probably 80 years.
Like, I'm 27 on my own.
25 over here. Charmer, you too. I mean,
I started playing in 94. And
Yeah.
that's assuming you don't count like poker and blackjack or whatever. I just mean trading card games specifically.
This is
94.
my favorite thing about this is when somebody, and this, I'm not even joking, in Minneapolis, I sat across somebody, and when and again, who are you playing? Everybody else that I played against, except one person, was, oh, cool. That's it. All right. That's it. One person was like, oh, I guess we're not going to have any fun. I guess this is like, like just sour grapes kind of stuff. And the best that I like to read and hear amidst the community is the whole thing is like, oh, well, I guess you're going to block it out and you're going to do this and you're going to swing hammer. Bitch, that's how I win the game. Like, you think if I ignore your dragons, I have a chance? Like, that's the whole freaking thing. Did you show up to win the tournament? Or did you show up to play bad cards and just whatever? Like, I'll do that. Like, I like in an armory, in a casual setting, whatever, I'll bring some dumb stuff and I'll take the risky plays. But when I'm queued up against an opponent with a gold foil on the line or a Pro Tour invite on the line, I have a plan, bitch, and I'm going to effectuate it. And frankly, if your plan is to spam dragons, I'm going to pop those mothers like they're hot. I think I used the F word. Yeah, I think I did it.
You son of a bitch.
Okay, Mark, beep mine. Let his through. We're gonna wave you through on yours. But like, this is what really drives me wild, is because people think that only they are allowed to win. So if you show up with your Ultra Dragon swarm the board nonsense, my lane to victory is killing your dragons until you run out of cards. It's the only way I can win. It is legitimately the only way I can win. And if you can't reconcile that, well, concede. Like, what do you want from me? But I'm not conceding the match, and I'm going to beat you. And I will beat you. But that's the way it goes. I have lost to one Dromai in 6 weeks. And that was DM Armada in Chicago at 9 a.m. And we talked through that whole match, and he described his strategy, and I was like, yeah, that's what is going to beat me. I told him, I said, there's one way you can beat me. He's like, is it XYZ? I said, yeah, it's XYZ. He's like, all right, let's go. And we both knew what we were doing, and I had no answer for it at the end of the day, and he played it like a god. But everyone else who just expects me to roll over because you're mad, well, sorry, that's not how it goes. Anyways, mini rant over. That's right. You may drop the F when you want, when you choose.
I just want to. I'm sorry, Derek. I get this out. The correct nomenclature that you're looking for, Flake, is get nerd.
Correct.
That is what you are trying to say, and you said it very eloquently. But that is just the proper term.
Thank you.
To just kind of slide it on in there.
So I need to jump in, and I need to. I hate that you're making me defend the nerds, Flake, but I need to jump in and say there have been times where I have sat across from a player and had a deep sigh when I saw they were playing Oldhim. There is a reason for this. It was very specifically in the early Aria days, before I think people understood how to play the hero. Oldhim felt like a suicide bomber because draws in Flesh and Blood are worse than losses. And it felt like, as another Guardian player, if I ran into one, they were just going to take us both out, and they didn't care about the outcome or the greater good, right? Like, that's why I describe him that way, because you knew that you could speed up your play, whatever, but like they were just going to draw it out because they didn't want to go on offense. Those early Oldhims, right? So there has been times where I felt that way. Now, I do think that Oldhim is both an interesting hero, but sometimes a frustrating hero as well, simply because I am of the opinion he is the only hero currently in the game where your play patterns deviate between Swiss rounds and untimed top 8 rounds.
Yes.
And I do have like some gripes about that, but overall, like, blocking is the point, right? Like, I'm 100% with you with Flake, but I do think that there are some legitimate criticisms because some people go too far into the like turtle and they forget that like the entire point is to get your opponent down to 0 HP. But also he is the only hero where Swiss round play, because there are definitely times where I'm like, man, I wouldn't do this at all this way if this was an untimed round, but my opponent is, even though I'm the Oldhim player, my opponent's taking twice as long on their turns, and I know I have to speed things up.
I think that's changed though, because the original Oldhims, you see the game text, you see what they have access to. You're like, okay, they used to play turn timber, they used to play all kinds of stuff. They were absolutely a defensive based hero, and yes, you're correct. I have used that same analogy. I'm like, the way it is that Oldhim's driving the car and he decides when we go to the bathroom, and at the end of the day, we all pissed our pants. That's basically what it used to be. But you were there, Logan, and when they announced the top 8. I said, and I'm like, oh, there's some Dromais in the top 8. I said, give me a Dromai and no clock, and I am winning this tournament. Like, let me play all the Dromais. I said, if there's no clock, I win every single one of these, because I saw how they were playing. There was consider it scouting, but while my opponents were sort of mulling over their turns, I would just kind of like be there, and I'd be like, okay, there's a Dromai playing against an Oldhim right there, and I'm like, they're playing, or their strategy. I see the cards they're playing and when they're playing them in the match, and I'm like, if I walk into this guy, I am winning that game, because they are the same strategy that I discussed with Armada. They are tossing out the window. I was like, beautiful. Give me them all day long. But no, I got the Art of War into Miracle Draw.
That was that was I had not seen a ninja hit the double Art of War to single block out a dominated attack for lethal in ever. That's the one, ever. So
props to the dude. No, that was
an out. He played to his out.
Precisely. And this is what I always tell people. I say, if this is your out, you play to it, whether it's 1%. 1% is better than 0%. And I'm pretty sure this dude was like, had a 2 to 3% chance to do this. Mm-hmm. For those who are wondering, so I have a full tournament report with details from match to match, along with my deck guide, whatever. I think I absolutely cruised to top 8. I had one loss, and the loss was because I didn't put Arcane Boots in my match against Briar like an idiot. Lesson learned. Long story short, I did not feel like I was really in danger. Maybe again, one game against the Lexi player, there was one turn that I knew I could navigate, but I was like, if they have a lightning press, I lose. And what they didn't have it, but ultimately that out was basically, it wasn't a dominated attack. It was I went down to 1, they were at 4. I pitched an ice blue, I think it was, to swing hammer, and had 2 cards left in hand. And in my hand, I'm like, I wonder if they think or whatever. They blocked for 3. And then I red pummeled it to 8. So I'm going in 5 over the top of their 4 health. And they Art of Ward to draw and buff their 3 block. Found another Art of War. And then buffed it up. They went to 1. They attacked me. I blocked it. My return fire was atrociously bad. It was another hammer swing. It was all 2 blocks and a hammer swing. Swung hammer. They blocked it and then abused me. And I was like, but again, you're absolutely right. And I wish I remember this person's name, and I apologize that I don't. But this person played to their outs and got rewarded, because maybe 29 other times they wouldn't have pulled it off. But the fact that they realized that there was an out, the amount of players that would have just been like, fist bump, you got it, I'm screwed. Look at my hand, it's garbage. They did it, and they earned it. And that's 100% true.
It's on your FAB TCG profile. You can just go look.
I don't, you know what? It's worth it to look just to reward.
It was a masterclass. Like, honestly, it was a very good play.
Yes,
and
absolutely. So we're going to do that right now. Absolutely.
That was a hell of a plan. And I can't remember, but I feel like there was one of those turns where the Lexi player did have a lightning press in hand, but they had played 3 of a kind and were locked out of it.
Matthew Gump on Fi. If you're listening to this, well played. Absolutely well played. I honestly believe that the only mistake I made in that entire tournament was forgetting to put my Arcane Boots on against Briar. That's it. Because in retrospect, and this is not me trying to pump my own tires that I'm a perfect player, but this is me saying that I put in the time and the work, and every scenario that was presented to me was not foreign. It was like, I know what you're doing. I know how to handle it. And I know that if I get I know what the punishment is going to be, so I don't want to put myself, or I need to insulate myself from what the punishment is, if it's bad or if it's good, or I got to make sure that when I get punished, it's not to lose the game. That's the kind of thing. But Matthew Gump is the player and deserves a lot of credit. A lot of credit. You didn't have the greatest tournament, though.
No, absolutely not. You want me to go into this? Is that what this is? You want me to rehash the pain?
I will say, you can briefly say, I do want to say that it was a great experience all the way around, and I do want to give people an opportunity to go listen to the story on your podcast on FleshnPod, because you did jump into that. But ultimately, I mean, there were positives from the tournament and there were negatives, and I think that the negative aspect was your performance, or your record, as it were. But overall, it was a great experience.
It's good. Yeah, it's a great event. A Battleground Cafe in White Bear Lake, I believe, Minnesota. # no free ads. But they did a great job of running in the event. It was, again, super well run, tight time frames. They were turning rounds. They weren't messing around. It was a tournament player's dream, because that's all you want. Like, all you want. You want correct rulings. You want a fast moving tournament. You want room to play the game. Like, the check boxes are very few, but a lot of stores don't check them. And in this case, this LGS went above and beyond and checked all the boxes. They had plenty of space for everybody. It's a very cool little shop with coffee and then just these nice play tables and everything else to go with it. A+, for an LGS ran event. Great. I mean, it's not the realm. You're not getting Derek on coverage and $1,000 prize pool and whatever the hell other madness Keith has decided on that random Tuesday.
Oh, he messaged me with some spicy bits today, man.
God, yep, every time. And that was great. My performance was not. I went full green against Reinar and did not get punished, and then just proceeded to get punished for the next 4 rounds because. Yeah, okay. That's how the universe looks at things.
The way you described it is that you were basically lining yourself up. You were face down, ass up against that Reinar, and like you were in heat, and he just was not interested. But you definitely presented big time.
And then I feel like when I got into that Briar mirror, and they were lightning press Briar, and some are, some aren't. You just have to kind of roll the dice. There's no real hint early enough to play around it. In most cases. And it really was Briar mirrors a lot of times come down to, did you draw Channel Mount Heroic? And then the flow chart starts. And the flow chart then goes to, no, did your opponent draw Channel Mount Heroic? And then the flow chart goes, no, you still have a chance. And then it goes to, yes, you're dead. And that is how that matchup works out. My opponent played it very well. It's the same opponent that defeated Flake in the Swiss. And she played incredibly well. And I then proceeded, but I went 2 straight games that I did not see a single Channel Mount Heroic. And against 2 matchups where you absolutely have to have it, which is the Briar Mirror and against Kano, because you have to race. Your options are limited. And at that point in time, I just died horribly in a pool of my own blood with a mountain staring at me and going, well, I mean, I was late to the party. I'm sorry, buddy.
In a pile of your own crapulence is what.
Yes.
Michelle Chimura was my only loss in Swiss. And she was very, very, she played it very well. She played Briar exceptionally well. I don't remember her making any decisions where I was like, oh, thank God she made that decision or anything like that. And it was great because there's one pivotal turn or one pivotal moment where she's like, do I Arsenal or do I send it? And in my head, I was like, please don't send it. Please don't send it. Please don't send it. And she's just like thinking, she's there and she's like thinking and she's thinking and she's thinking and she kind of gives me a look. I said, if this was anything but a pro quest, I would absolutely like, I would offer my advice, but it's at my own expense. And I really want to win this game. And she's like, she starts to laugh. She's like, oh yeah, no. She's like, it's all good. She's like, and then she saw every line. As soon as she saw that, she's like, she does the whole thing where you flip the equipment and she's there and she's like, she does like the whole look at my boots. And I'm like,
oh no.
But it was like turn 2 already. Like it was already, we're well past that, but you could see in her mind, the gears were turning. She's like, oh, this Fucking idiots. Oh my
I
God.
got him.
I'm going to step all over his kicks the whole way. I'm scuffing his Jordans the whole way through. It was just nasty.
The wild thing about that tournament was that in that Briar Mirror specifically was that it felt like looking at the tables of who had won, that whoever won that Briar Mirror probably had just a fairly simple road to the top 8, and the person who didn't was in for pain. And well, I didn't, and I was in for pain.
Yeah. You guys mentioned the realm, and I think that it's worth mentioning as well that community tournaments are starting to, I don't want to say ramp up, but that is probably the way to put it, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the backgrounds, a lot of wheels that are turning. Keith, like you said, is like a psychopath, but a good psychopath. Like, I don't know how else to possibly explain this. Like, I have good relations with so many awesome LGS owners, but to me, they're not like LGS owners anymore. They're community. No. They're like community champions. Like, they're people who are just like, they're visionaries in to a degree. And from the people at MinMax Games and what they do for the community, for Job at Kayfabe Cards and what he's done to support things like Goliath Gauntlet, and they're getting involved as well with trying to get involved with stuff like that. But Realm and Keith and Jacob Bartram at Realm Games have really come through exceptionally strong. What I want to dig into briefly to sort of wrap up this discussion is where you guys see community tournaments going, what the ceiling is for that, and what that means for things like LSS's tournaments, where I'll be completely transparent here. Like, my schedule is filled with community-based stuff. My schedule is more hyped up about getting involved with that. I love ProQuest. Sorry, I love Pro Tour. I love Nats. I love callings. I love casting them. I love being there. But at the same time, those things are not always easy to get to. They're not always, they kind of feel a little bit more mechanical now. They feel a little bit more cookie cutter is not the way, but like there's a completely different feel when you go to that speakeasy tournament, Battle Hardened, that Realm put on, and have a awesome time than it is if you go to like SCG Con and funny story. Yeah. So side note, I got accepted as a content creator for SCG Con. I was offered a free pass to the command zone under the guise that I would play commander. And I was like, I'm a Flesh and Blood guy. They're like, no, we understand. We can maybe trade the playmat for like a Flesh and Blood playmat. I was like, no, we're good. I appreciate it. Thank you. I said, I wish that you guys would promote Flesh and Blood more, but okay. But hey, it is what it is. And I'm going to be there at Indy, but their Flesh and Blood kind of support is not as good as I wish it was. Anyway.
Lackluster is the word you're looking for.
Correct.
I'll say it. Yeah. That's fine.
Derek, you just came back from Ohio. You just were there helping out, and like they just did a ProQuest, and they're like, yeah, let's have another big party. Like, let's do another big thing. Let's have a cast. Let's do this. Like, that to me is so important in the community right now, because I feel like there's a developing or a growing disconnect from the community and LSS based events. And right there to snatch that out of their hand is at least in North America, I can only speak for North America or the US specifically. You have so many different entities that are like, we're taking this, like we're taking this ball and we're running with it.
Yeah. It reminds me quite a bit of like early esports days. Honestly, I feel like we're in the beginning stages of a real kind of grassroots revolution for the game, because I think folks are realizing that there are folks who want to play Flesh and Blood competitively. There's a strong desire for that. And as cool as the existing events are, some folks feel like there's just not enough of them, right? I know several players that feel like, for example, once this season ends, they have nothing to play for. I'll use air quotes, but they have nothing to play for essentially until Road to Nats. yes, there's going to be skirmish. Yes, there's going to likely be some other stuff, callings or whatever, but they just feel like, okay, well, this is like the first half of the year. And then once it's done, I don't do anything until the fall, basically. So these game stores, organizations, I'm with you. They don't even feel like game stores, right? I think they feel just like community champions.
Feels like Six Flags, man. When I go to Realm.
Yeah. Well, when you go to the Realm, I mean, that is just something else in general, because Keith loves to ensure that people are having a good time above everything else. Like, his goal is, when you leave, you are supposed to have felt like you had a good time, win or lose, regardless of conditions. You know, this past Sunday is a great example, right? I was driving down. We were supposed to get like less than half an inch of snow or whatever. I didn't even know we were supposed to get snow when I checked the weather before I left to make the long drive. And of course, you know, the minute I hit the Michigan-Ohio border, it's like blizzard conditions and it's slow on the highway. And then by the time I left, I was scraping like 5 or 6 inches of snow off my car. But Keith knew people were driving in despite the weather. So he delayed the start by like half an hour because he didn't want anyone to feel rushed. He wanted people to be safe. We still, despite the very inclement weather, had just shy of 60 people for the ProQuest, and everybody had a good time. Even when I was doing the commentary with Jacob, who I love you, Jacob, but missed you, Flake, as a commentary partner. Even when we were doing that, though, because we were in our own separate room, you could still hear through the wall what I call the classic Keith cheer, which means Keith has done something ridiculous. Whether that was like, he was giving out alpha packs, he was like throwing boxes of Crucible Unlimited around. I think there was, again, like flip it or rip it or something going on. Like, you just hear what I call the classic Keith cheers. Not Keith cheering. Keith has done something to elicit cheers because he wants everyone to have a good time. And so, yeah, it's fantastic. I love their events. I'm looking forward to their circuit that they're doing this year, because they're doing a bunch, not just there in Ohio, but they're actually, you know, picking up and going across the country so that everyone else can get to know their events. And I think, again, this is just the beginning of that kind of grassroots revolution. I think that they're going to do it even better every time, even better next year. And I think that when other organizations see how successful they are, they're going to want to do the same things. So if you're listening, Keith, I love you, and I can't wait to cast an event on a cruise ship with you.
I don't know what you mean by that, but
Nope.
Dude,
I
don't want to
no
spoil.
comment.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything because
It's all nuts.
dude, and like, it's nuts, but it's not like, you know what? It's nuts to the degree of like, it's one thing for someone like Elon Musk to say, you know what, I want to go to the moon. I'd be like, all right, cool. But like, he's like, I want to go to the moon like tomorrow, and we're like,
Right? Yeah.
like I got stuff to do tomorrow.
I can move
All
my
right, so
calendar around.
Funny story about that. When he contacted me about casting an event, I replied, Keith, I love you. I will cast on the moon for you, right? As a joke. Like, that is literally the line of text. I think I've showed it to Logan before. So when I was at the ProQuest event and we were talking about future stuff or whatever, and I said, man, I told you, I love you. I'll cast on the moon with you. He seriously stopped me and he went, you know, you say that, but I want to do something in space one day. And I had to check myself because I realized it's Keith and he's not joking.
Right. This is actual something he's thinking about. Yeah.
But he's like, he's young. Like we're all young, dude. Like, you never know, like 10 years from now where they're like, dude, you shut up. Like, I get it. Like, you know, am I the youngest one? Am I? No.
You are the youngest one.
Yeah, you're the baby of the bunch in this one.
Thank you.
If we were the Sugar Hill Gang, you would be oh God, I can't remember the names of the members. God, I'm punting. This is awful. It's Big Bang.
You're showing your age. That's what you're doing.
Babyface DeMarco.
Wonder Mike.
That's your gangster name, Babyface DeMarco.
Babyface DeMarco.
I don't know if it's coming through, but I just spent 5 days in Minneapolis with friends that I genuinely consider like my family. I shaved the day I left, which was Wednesday. It is currently Tuesday. This is the best I can do.
Wow.
A week, dude. A week.
If I went a week, I'd be a damn Wookiee.
Dude. Anyway. But yeah, like that's the thing. It's like when Keith says it, everybody has dumb ideas, but that's not like, I'm not saying his ideas are dumb. I'm saying everybody has these like grandiose ambitions that up on paper, trust me, when I was in the hospital and like I was like, like I was in the hospital for those 4 months, and the things that you say you want to do when you get out, I'm like, I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna get my pilot's license. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna learn to play piano. And then you're out for a week, and you're like, or I could just eat more M&Ms, and like Charmer sent me 54 packs of Oreos. I got to work on those, like true story. I got like 4 Amazon boxes of like, how many 20 bags of Oreos you sent me? I think it was
like whatever cases were, and it was a variety thing too. So it wasn't even just like the standard. I sent him like regular double stuff, the golden one,
mega stuff.
Yeah, because
did you get mint?
Mint is I gave those away. No offense, I did get mint. Mint is garbage.
Okay.
I got golden Oreos.
I love golden Oreos.
Golden Oreos are so good. So good.
That's
so good.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing that really bothers me, and not bothers me, but it really confuses me about America and like the science that you guys have about
one thing. I got a bone to pick with Oreo. Did you know that there are s'mores Oreos? Did you know that?
I did not know that there were s'moreos.
No, that's the point.
I was going to say, if they're not...
It says s'mores Oreos. It does not say s'moreos. Do you know how stupid that is?
I was about to say, if they're not called s'moreos, then there's a lost opportunity.
They are not.
This is why I've never heard of them, because their naming is dumb. Sorry.
It's
morons.
How do you miss that?
Morons.
That is so easy.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, so this is the whole thing, because we've all done this as kids. You take 2 Oreos, you separate them, you take the 2 cream size, you put them together. You were the original inventor of the double stuffed Oreos. You just never knew it. You did it on your own. Then you go to the store, you're like, oh my God, somebody took my idea. Amazing. I don't have to do it on my own. You buy them. What do? You do the same thing. And what happens? A year or 2 later, you go to the store, mega stuff Oreos. I have stopped doing it. Oreos marketing, you absolute thieves. You just, anyway.
Diabolical bastards. That's all they are.
I mean, it's efficiency is what it is. Let's be real.
No, it really is. Yeah.
It's totally efficiency. All right. We're going to wrap this one up on that very on point note. We do have the go again segment with all chains are unshackled for you guys on that one. You can have free reign. You can say what you want. That is a Patreon exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to see these 2 wonderful people, I guess go toe to toe in a inflatable pool full of Jello, you can. That's also going to be there. Yeah, that's what we're doing. But
do it.
But before that, I do want to say thank you so much, for just being great friends and colleagues in the business. And I know that you and I, Derek, you and I, Logan, we've shared so much, of intimate feelings and honesty amongst each other that I do genuinely believe you guys are some of my closest friends, and I do appreciate that. But I also want to tell everybody out there who appreciates this show, you have to check out FleshnPod. I when I say that it's the show that I don't miss, I truly, truly mean it. There's so much good content out there, and I really appreciate all of it. And I do try to consume as much of it as I can. But listening to, I was going to say in the shower, it's when it's on then, like, all veils
not
off.
The first time you've listened to me in the shower.
Well, yeah, because you're usually there saying more shampoo, sir. Yeah, exactly. It genuinely feels like hanging out, and that's and when I live alone in a city that I don't have many friends nearby, it's that kind of good feeling. So I do recommend everybody goes checks out FleshnPod. It's a great podcast, and hashtag no free ads. So Logan, give us your digits and your coordinates, my friend.
There's no free ads because I'm paying for this ad with my time at this point in time. But it's weird because I can't eat exposure, but I'm gonna have to take it. Although I was asking, I still wonder what exposure tastes like. I know that it needs salt.
I always give it to my landlord for rent. So
it tastes like the inside of a sweaty trench coat because most people who have exposed themselves to me were wearing one. So I assume that's what exposure tastes like.
You know what mopery is? It's exposing yourself to a blind person. Now, going back to what Flake had asked, you can find me on Twitter at Logan Peterson. I'm tweeting all forms of inanity right now, lots of various sports things, but mostly Flesh and Blood. That's kind of what I do right now. And then every Tuesday, new episodes of Flesh and Pod are released on all of your favorite podcast platforms. I will not plug the Patreon because that's just taking money out of Flake's mouth, and we can't have that.
We have.
So-
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we put things in his mouth. We do not take out.
Dude, I play against players that all of their dragons are marvels. They have an extra $5
They
a
have
month.
the
All right.
$5. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you can go to patreon.com/FleshNPod and check out the tiers there. We're working on a lot of different things to amp that up and get some merch out there. We really, honestly, our Flesh and Pod community calls themselves fappers and is one of the most entertaining communities I've ever been a part of, but they're also just thirsty humans in every way, shape, and form. They have bullied us into things such as having a Patreon. We didn't want one, but they bullied us into starting one. And now they're bullying us into having merchandise. I'm currently pushing back on the Flesh and Pod Speedo, mainly because the rigors of quality testing a banana hammock cannot be overstated. So Derek has not signed on to make sure that happens in the appropriate ways. He's the only one I would trust. So we're going to have to move on from that for the moment, but maybe someday in the near future, we can get that going.
Yeah, dude, if you need models for that stuff, I'm in. You just let me know. I am shameless. I care not.
Oh my God. The Twitter sphere is going to be on me about that now. And all right.
Let's go.
Right.
Jarek?
Okay.
I almost forgot what I was supposed to be doing. That was a bit of
Sit-ups
a
to
wild
prepare for
ride
the
there.
photo shoot. That's what you should be doing.
Oh, no. You can find me at that Charmer on Twitter. It is Charm3R, not Charmander, not Chamber, not Charger. It's also just not Charmer because Twitter hates me and won't give me the old dead account. But if you want to find me in general, usually just searching for Charmer will bring it up. I am just Charmer on Twitch. I am just Charmer on YouTube. And I am just Charmer in the hearts of all of you beautiful ladies and gentlemen and everyone else in between. That being said, if you love card games, you will probably enjoy my content because I play them all. There's probably card games that you've never even heard of that I enjoy. I know that Star Wars, Star Trek Decipher ones always come up for Flake, but I'm a big advocate of old Alien versus Predator stuff and Mech Warrior, and there's just wyvern jokes that I'll make from time to time. But for this year anyway, it's going to be a lot of Flesh and Blood. I like to tweet screenshots of my Marvel Snap insanity from time to time. And then there's a lot of new games coming out that I'm planning on covering in one way, shape, or form. Stuff like Battle Spirits, Alpha Clash, Lorcana, etc., etc. So if you love card games, then you might enjoy my content. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not your dad.
That's awesome. Like my old Gwent podcast I had with my good friend Pavel Berja, it eventually just turned into, we rebranded it as a CCG podcast because we're like, dude, we're just talking about every card game ever. And, we got to stay on the rails here, but you're right. I always tell people, I said, I'm not a Flesh and Blood player. I'm a card player who happens to really, really love this game. And I don't ever want to be, pigeonholed into one particular card game because that's not who I am. And I don't think that's who you guys are either. But you guys do an exquisite job of really adding life and a genuine soul to your outlook on the game and such. And if there's one thing that I can say about Flesh and Pod is that you get a real snapshot of people who are not afraid to give an honest opinion about things. And there's, so to a certain degree, I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm fenced in. I'm never afraid to say what I feel, but conversations that I have in private are not necessarily the ones as reflected always on this podcast.
If you want a taste of it, then you need to sign up for the Instant Speed Patreon because we are going to give it to you in the Go Again segment.
Oh, both barrels.
Lovely.
Both of them.
All right, friends, there you go. That's the best endorsement that I can get. Stick around. If you're a Patreon member, you can go ahead and find the Go Again segment where these two clowns are going to pile into the clown car and go straight to the circus. I will be there. For everyone else, I want to say thank you to FAB Cards, as always, for being a champion in the community and for supporting this podcast. To BCW Supplies, thank you so much. And obviously to our patrons, you guys are awesome. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. So keep playing the game, you might win. We'll see you next time on ISP.